You're listening to TehachaPod with Key Budge, Corey Costello, and Greg Garrett.
TehachaPod time again. Key Budge, Corey Costello today. Greg couldn't make it in, but we've got something special to talk about, Corey.
Yeah, we do. It's always exciting. We have a very talented team of people that are able to put together some pretty awesome opportunities and make them come to fruition when it comes especially to receiving grant funds. So that's what we're chatting about today.
Yeah, this is something that we do very well. And I say we because I'm a part of the team. I don't write the grants, but today we do have the person that takes the time, figures out how to get it done here, and is a first-time guest at TehachaPod, Denise Montes. Denise, welcome to TehachaPod.
Thank you, Key. It's great to be here.
See, Denise's office is next door, so even though she hasn't been on the show, she's been forced to listen to every show that's been recorded.
We've even displaced her once, too. We took her office to make room for TehachaPod as well, so we displaced her. So she's been a good sport about it.
And then also her partner in crime, Andrew Norton, is back, a returning guest to TehachaPod. And Andrew is an integral part of this grant that was received today. So we're going to get a chance to talk to you two on the technical side, how this all came to be, what we've got. So let's recap it.
Yeah, so we got a just shy of $2.1 million from the Caltrans Clean California Grant Program. And of course, I think when people hear Caltrans, they automatically think roads, which would make a ton of sense, but this is the state of California and things sometimes don't go that way.
Right.
But they had this initiative, and we've actually talked to Caltrans about Clean California on the show, and a lot of those initiatives were trying to clean up blighted areas or just improve, mitigate heat and global warming effects and this sort of thing. And so they created this program, about a $300 million fund, I think, this last time around, and asked for real quick turnaround projects to basically beautify areas across, your city or your county. And so that's what this was about. So this wasn't, although it's a Caltrans initiative, it does not have to do with transportation per se. It could, but it wasn't something that could have been used for roads, for example.
But the key word was beautification.
Yeah, and that was the thing. And so we went out and we have had for a very long time a plan on the shelf for a park at Valley Boulevard and right there by Linden Court. And it was one of those things we talked a lot about, state takeaways. There was money in the old RDA for that, and the state took that money away. So this project had to sit on the shelf. And so this came around, and everybody sort of got together and said, how do we revive this particular park for this grant? And made a few changes that Andrew and Denise are going to talk about, and got the grant, which is amazing.
So how did this all come together, Denise? What's the process for you? Are you looking for different grant opportunities, or were you notified of the program? How did this come together?
Yeah, there's a list, email list you can get on with Caltrans, and they do notify you of grant opportunities that come up. And there's different people in the city who receive those same emails. And so it gets funneled to me whether I'm directly emailed or not. And if a grant opportunity comes around that I think that we've got a good fit, then we look into it.
So with this is a 1 acre parcel that's on Valley, right across from where Mountain View intersects there. And there used to be a meat market there. Yeah. And it's just, right now, it's just open vacant land. So how did the thought process come together as far as what should be on this acre of land?
Well, like Corey said, there had been an idea to have a park there previously. So there was a plan still on our S drive that had the park concept there. And we basically printed it off and marked it up and said, this is what we'd like to see there.
Yeah, we all sat down, kind of a bunch of us got together because we knew this fund, there was a good chance to get money because it was $300 million, and they wanted the projects really quickly, and they wanted to award really quickly, which never happens usually in this case. So we all got in a room and said, okay, what can we do? And then, yes, we had the old plan, but Denise is a pretty good master of scoring grants high and knowing what they want. Well, some of that old stuff in the plan wouldn't fly today. Maybe it was too much turf. It didn't have enough cooling elements to it. And so we had to kind of figure out what. And we all talked about that, seeing that lot being used by the neighborhood kids that are playing soccer on it. They're playing baseball in the dirt. And so the kids, we all kind of felt needed something in that neighborhood. And I think we brought up the five-a-side soccer park. I think I just got done watching something on Amazon It was one of the All or Nothing series with Juventus, which is an Italian Serie A club. And one of the guys was in his old neighborhood playing in a similar, these are all over a lot of countries, these really small sort of indoor soccer, but outside, using walls and fences. And he said, this is where I got my start. Now he's playing for one of the richest clubs in the world. And he's like, this is where I got my start. And I kind of thought it's a decent little idea. And then Andrew went all in and was able to figure out how to make it happen.
Sure. Yeah, there's a number of kids, as Corey said, we brainstorm these grand ideas and see if we have a fit locally that accompanies and would score reasonably well. What we don't want is Denise wasting her time on something that no one felt like was a good fit or that wouldn't score well. So the vision was there with the park, and then folding in elements that included the more local community. And five-a-side soccer is a blast. I've played it a few different times, and it's one of those like quick games, quick quarters. Everyone gets a good workout, and seemed fun for and appropriately sized. It wasn't big enough for a football field. I mean, we only had an acre to play with,
and we had to contain it too because the Valley Boulevard being so close. You didn't want to have an open field where people are just launching soccer balls into the traffic all the time and kids are chasing after basketballs. It wasn't going to work. So this is actually a fenced-in, controlled play area.
It's like a hockey rink.
More or less.
Basically.
Yeah.
I had an opportunity many, many years ago, like 25, 30 years ago. When I was in journalism, I covered the LA Lasers, which was the indoor soccer team.
Yeah.
Played
fierce rivals of the San Diego Sockers in the same league. Yeah,
and they played down at the fabulous Forum in Inglewood, which is now where the Rams stadium is. But they got a chance to play on that field, and it was basically the Kings hockey, area, and then they put turf or artificial grass down, and then they had soccer nets.
You play off the wall like it's hockey.
Yeah, you play off the wall, but the ball stays in. It's not leaving the field. It's not going out on the Valley Boulevard. It's not going into neighbors' yards. It's being able to stay contained in this area, and it's fast moving.
Yeah, and I mean, that would kind of fit this metric of we needed something the local kids could play. We needed something everyone could do that was fun and frankly a bit different than, we have a number of parks around town that have basketball courts, and so it was something a bit different, something that's contained, as Corey said. We're not rolling out into Valley Boulevard. It doesn't have the openness and the ruralness of Warrior Park. That's a residential neighborhood. This is bumping a pretty busy, heavily trafficked street. So you needed something.
It's a cool concept too. I mean, the game, when you get into the rules, it's very similar to soccer, obviously, but there's 5 players per team, 1 in goal and 4 on the field. And then instead of like in regular soccer has a penalty box or a goal box, basically penalty area. This doesn't have a box. It has an arch. So it's kind of like a 5-foot arch or so, Andrew, sort of from the middle of and so you can't shoot inside that arch. So you got to be outside. You can't. So it's not like hockey where you can all jam around the net and just try to stuff it in. You got to make a shot, and then the goalkeeper has to make the save with their feet or hands, but he can't just, like regular soccer, kick the ball down the field. Right. He has to use his hands to pass the ball off once he makes the save. So it keeps it kind of, it has a lot of same soccer elements, but keeps it really to the field of play that they have it in. And then, of course, obviously encourages scoring and keeps things moving quickly.
So that's going to be something cool, different. Do we have anything like that in Kern County?
Regionally, I do think there's one center off of Ming Avenue in Bakersfield.
The old Laurel Glen Tennis Center was turned into I believe it's a Jewish community center, and they converted their tennis courts into something very similar. But I don't think there's a public park that offers this anywhere in the county.
I don't believe so.
Yeah, so this could be the first publicly owned facility that offers something like this, and I'm just excited to give the kids an opportunity to, when you see. Soccer is one of those sports, and believe me, I'm not a soccer player, but you appreciate the impact that it has on the world, and it's a sport that sometimes really is focused on low-income areas, and this neighborhood is one of those areas, and because it's a sport of opportunity, it's very simple equipment-wise. It's one ball, and you can get a lot of kids involved with one ball, and this will give an opportunity to hone their skills and not play on dirt anymore, and that's what I'm pumped about.
The kids have claimed that sandlot.
Yeah.
For their area to play, and now it's going to be converted into just an incredible park that they deserve. They've already said, "Hey, it's good enough for us to play on."
Yeah.
and now we're going to make the improvements, and thanks to this grant. Now, is this grant, do we have to match funds with it?
No, we actually qualified to have it 100% funded, and we don't have a match on this one.
So it's 100% paid for out of tax funds that some originated right here, and we're able to pull them back from Sacramento and bring them back to Tehachapi. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer. I mean, we have, we've talked about it before, but you've got so much of if you look at the RDA, right, what was going to initially fund this project many moons ago, that money got taken away by the state. You're still getting taxed and they're keeping it. So it's nice every once in a while to get a bone thrown back and to be able to get some of our money back to build something like this, and just make the infrastructure in that neighborhood a better, and give those kids a great opportunity, which is going to be cool. And the community too. It's not just going to be a neighborhood park. Andrew and I have been talking about it. I think there's potential for leagues, organized leagues. Sure. Maybe TVRPD wants to step in, run a league. Maybe somebody else wants to run a league and use that facility. I think there's great opportunities there.
And I mean, there are AYSO, local soccer, and other things. But when I first hired in at the city, I played on like a pickup league after high school hours, and it was one of those like, man, this is fantastic. How is there not more, adult actual exercise, non-basketball leagues?
And there's other stuff at that park too. We talk about five-a-side. That's the fun part, but there's a bunch of other things in that park as well.
What else did you guys include in this acre parcel?
Well, there'll be 2 playground structures, one geared for younger children, like 6 months to 2 years, and then there'll be a larger one that goes up to 12 years old. So there'll be a couple play structures. There's picnic tables, so families can come and spend the whole day there if they want to. And then it's very accessible by the bike path that's on Valley Boulevard, so anybody can walk or bike to the park, and there'll be bike racks as well as parking for vehicles that show up as well. Drinking fountains, benches,
big
lighting.
Shade structures, right? You put a couple of big shade sail things or metal shades, or
there's going to be shade structures over all the playground equipment.
It's awesome.
It's going to be a place that people are going to want to go to, and that neighborhood's going to adopt it very quickly. I mean, the kids already have, but the rest of the families are going to come out, and moms and dads and grandparents, and they're going to, utilize everything there.
Kids get creative. I mean, and I was talking to somebody who lives in that neighborhood, and they said, we're so happy for this because we've watched kids like create their own stuff where they're like building bike ramps and they're shooting down onto Aspen Drive with cars going by them. And like, she's like, we're panicking watching these kids try to create something to do, And so this will be a lot safer for them to still recreate and not dodge cars.
And like you said, it's connected to the bike path. It runs right up there, so that makes it accessible for all ages, and that's a big deal. It is,
and then we'll have shade trees as well, so it'll be beautiful as well as very functional.
What were some of the things that scored well, Denise? You're really into like the scoring of the grants because you get points on everything. What were some of the real focus points as you wrote this grant that you were really trying to design around and focus on?
Well, a lot of it is the heat mitigation, and so the five-a-side soccer, the turf that comes with it, does do that as well. It mitigates the heat as well as all the shade trees and the shade structures that we'll be putting over the playground equipment and the picnic areas. So that had a huge impact on this, I believe.
And that's probably why a lot of things like basketball courts wouldn't have worked, because you're just pouring concrete, you're adding actually heat to the environment.
Yeah, the grant wouldn't have paid for something like that. It had to be some non-permeable surface, and this is the best way to do that.
And it doesn't require watering.
Right.
So it's going to be effective in all of our goals that we've got set.
Right. Part of the grant was the drought tolerant landscaping that will be put in as well. So they don't want something that's going to, because Clean California is all about saving water as well. So that's another point of the grant.
So now that the grant has been awarded, now things are going to shift more and more over towards you, Andrew, in getting this executed. So where does it go from here, and what kind of timelines do we look at? I mean, this was a very quick, aggressive grant from application to it being awarded. So are there timelines that you have to have this completed by, or is this something that now that it's been awarded, it will follow kind of the similar timetables to get it done?
Yeah, most of our projects follow, and a timetable, maybe not so much, but logical sequence, sure, is we're going to solicit a firm to lay all this out, right? To design it, to design the pavement needs, to design the parking. And while we have a general layout, if you start thinking about stuff like, irrigation around a five-a-side or trees and that kind of stuff. So, and bringing water onto the site and finishing, what is it, Linden Court, I believe.
Yeah.
So doing those elements first on a layout metric, selecting trees and plants that are tolerant in this region, and same for the five-a-side, is we don't want to purchase something that's low quality. I mean, we want to target a high quality product, and so we'll walk through design, and then we'll same for specifications, which design lays it out on paper. Specifications define the type of PVC that we're supposed to use or whatever those items are. Then we'll walk into construction probably a year from now, spring next year. And then bid it, and low bidder, we issue it following public contract code, and we'll have to award to the low bidder.
So could this be done at end of summer of 23?
Yeah, that would be the goal, is to enter construction before. I think the major metric is it being in construction before.
So that's really fast.
They come on quick.
Yeah. I mean, that's 18 months from now that we're looking at
completion.
This thing, being completed, and the first ball can be kicked into the goal.
Yeah, and then we have to market a big grand opening, because Denise and I sat down and talked about that for the grant, right? We made a bunch of promises we're going to deliver on now.
Yes, that is true.
I think I said I'd get a player from the U.S. men's national team, so I hope he's still on the team in 2 years by the time this thing opens, because I have to deliver on that promise.
See, that's cool. It's just a patch of dirt right now, and then 18 months from now, we'll see a transition. It'll morph. We'll have to do some kind of time lapse, imagery of from where it is and where it was prior when it was.
Well, think about that whole area though too. I mean, a year ago, we've had that what was the Valley Foods Market, and there's still one little building that's a little convenience store that's still there. But the Valley Foods Market was there, closed many moons ago after the Aspen Meat Market took it over, and frankly, it was a code enforcement nightmare. It was a problem for the police department. It attracted graffiti, it attracted crime, it attracted vagrants, whatever. It was an issue, and it had been bought and sold a bunch of times, and a lot of code enforcement fines paid, until ultimately the owner was convinced, I just need to knock this down, because this building's way out of date, out of code. It's going to cost me way too much money to rebuild it. I should just knock it down. So that's what they did, which creates an opportunity for somebody to build something else, new building next to a new park, which would be awesome. So that's going to raise the value of that property. But if you go back just a year ago to what was there, and what's happened, and now you're going to have a new park and maybe a new building as well on that property, or the next parcel over. That's a big change to that neighborhood in a short amount of time.
Well, and that was that was the major goal of this grant, right? Is to eliminate blighting. And you think you're going from a kind of dirt strewn, weedy plot of land that we owned and had a pie in the sky dream for, to this grant came out and was actually a really good fit for.
And we did a pretty good job keeping it clean, because even Denise and I joked in the grant, it's like, it's not messed up enough right now. It was pretty clean. It was dirt everywhere, but the neighbors and the city staff kept a lot of the debris off the lot. And so we're like, man, I guess it would be nicer, for grant purposes, if this thing was a little more messed up, but it is what it is.
It was part of the Love Tehachapi when they did the cleanup of that neighborhood. They also included going through and making sure if there was any bulky items and things like that, and getting it off the property. So yeah, that's neighbors helping neighbors there with that, and just kind of the beautification. So that's going to be pretty neat. And then with, you guys have completed the bike path in that area, and the urban greening with the trees coming through. So that area has received a lot of attention. The Mill Street crossing, that update. There's a lot of cool things that have taken place along that stretch of Valley Boulevard.
We have Rule 28 coming through there as well.
Underground.
Underground all the power poles and everything through that whole region.
So what's our timetable on that?
That one's a little bit longer, because SCE is really at the helm of that. We're floating on there.
And the county of Kern's involved in that one too. So it's like multiple agencies. Everyone's got to line up their calendars.
Yeah, absolutely. The Kern County helped fund it. And we're undergrounding, and it requires, SCE to go through and design not only current needs, but when you underground, you've got to install enough for future build out. So, I think we're probably 4 years out on that one, if I had to guess.
And remember too, it's power, it's phone. Other utilities are co-located on those poles, so those got to be undergrounded as well. But that whole stretch, I mean, is getting a nice facelift, and there's other, potential transportation things to talk about down the road in that area as well. So it was one of the few spots that I think people would say, man, I wish we could do something about that area. And so it's starting to come together. The pieces are starting to fall. And I think, over the next couple years, 2 to 5, I think it's going to see a major transition in that neighborhood.
Well, that brings me to the next thing I want to transition to. And Denise, you and I were talking about it the other day, is that you've got a workshop coming up and you're looking for input from the public. So what is the workshop that you're working on, and what kind of input are you looking for?
Yeah, I'm having an ATP workshop, and ATP stands for Active Transportation Program. And active transportation means people walking and biking. So we're talking about bicycle facilities. We're talking about sidewalks for people to walk on safely. There's a lot of areas in this town that don't have sidewalks and don't have bike lanes, and that's what this grant program does. And so I live in a small area of the town. I can't know where every need is, and I'm looking for input into something that I can put together for a successful grant application.
So when someone says, hey, we need sidewalks, is that good enough, or do you need to know that you need sidewalks on which street at what between the two intersections? Does that help you when it's more specific?
Yeah, when it's more specific, or even there's no sidewalks, it's dirt and it's uneven, and I see people trip, or I see kids walking to school. Those kind of things help, because the people who review the grants have no clue about this community, and I have to tell the story. And if you don't tell me the story, then I don't know the story.
So you're painting a picture for someone else that's going to make a decision on whether Tehachapi gets this grant money or City X gets this grant money.
Right.
And the more strokes that you can put on the painting and adding more color, that means the participation, the exact description of what the issue is, whether it's seniors walking, trip hazards, kids getting off the bus, walking into the dirt. Mm-hmm. Those are the things you need to know, and you need to know where.
Yes, exactly. I need to know where.
And then where can we, let's say, when is this workshop?
The workshop is on March 30th at 5 p.m. at the community room in the police department. So that's over on C Street.
So the Tehachapi Police Department community room, it's right there on C Street. And then so you'll be in that room and just taking down comments from people, or will there be
there'll be a presentation,
questionnaire and a presentation?
Yeah, there'll be a presentation. This is not the first time we've done a workshop like this, so we do have ideas from previous ones as to what to write for this cycle. But every 2 years, this cycle comes around again. So we always need new ideas, and maybe there's an area that does need attention now, and I can write a grant for that area, because as we keep writing the grants and executing them, then we're improving little parts of this town. So I need to expand my search. So whether or not it's a new idea that somebody brings in, that maybe 2 or 3 people bring in 2 or 3 different new ideas, but I can combine them into one project, because that's possible too.
Now, does it help if they send you an email or a letter, or can they call you? If they can't make the workshop, are there other things that they can do to support this effort and the things that you need? Yeah,
there is an email that they can send their ideas to as well. And then there is a phone number where they can call and leave a message if they can't. Maybe they don't have internet access or Wi-Fi or something like that. And so there is a phone number as well to call.
Denise, by chance, do you happen to know the email address for people to send that info into?
Yes, if somebody would like to send an email with their project ideas and locations, they can send it to projects@tehachapicityhall.com.
Or they can call City Hall?
Yes, they can call City Hall, and the extension is 140.
Okay, so that's 661-822-2200, extension 140. You can attend the workshop, and you said, I'm sorry, that again, was that the 30th?
Yes, the 30th.
At TPD's community room?
Yes.
Now, what if someone wants to write a letter? Do we do snail mail still? Is that still something that's valid?
They can do a letter, and in fact, any letter of support is more than welcome.
So they can go ahead and make their comments on social media as it's easy to do.
I was going to say, I was just going to ask a question. Do Facebook comments count, or do you need to formalize that as a request?
I can reference the Facebook comments, but as many reviewers have told me, there is nothing like the power of a genuine, authentic letter of support.
So if you take the time to make the comments on social media, take a little more time and exercise your thoughts, put it in an email or a letter.
Yeah.
So that way it can make that extra step, get those extra points that we need on these grant applications to get and fund and put in more sidewalks and things that we can for non-motorized improvements around town.
Yes.
Now, anything else that we've got coming up that you guys would like to talk about, share?
Sure. One of the things is we're finishing the urban greening tree project. That was $1 million tree planting project around town. So that's being buttoned up hopefully in the next couple weeks.
I'm glad you brought it up because I want to ask you about the process you went through, because my office was next to yours at the time, and it seemed like every day or every couple of days there was something that would hiccup from outside the organization come back to you. And
He
you
had
to
hair.
make a
He had
change.
torn it out.
Yeah. It was, whether it was the trees, the type of trees, there was all kinds of things that were little bugs, but you worked your way through it.
Sure. I mean, you just gotta. That's part of the job. Is just muddling through all these minor issues. With these urban greening grants, obviously they have carbon sequestration metrics that we have to hit, or trees that they do or don't believe will thrive in this area. So we did go through a number of iterations of, we've got an 8-foot median on Tehachapi Boulevard. What trees can everyone agree on? And then the second part of that is the economy is so goofy right now. What trees can we actually get our hands on? So it was a number of iterations of these. Oh, everyone agrees on this tree. Okay, that's not commercially available for the next 5 years. So start again.
And too, like, just because they sell it at Home Depot doesn't mean it'll grow here. That kind of thing. Because we've all planted stuff. They're like, oh yeah, this will work. Just because it says it'll fit the zone doesn't mean it will. So we have a lot of experience on stuff we've planted before. And maybe it's grown, but we don't like whether it's a seed pod that comes off of it, or, the branches grow down and we need them to grow up because it's close to traffic.
Right.
So there's stuff that you just know will not necessarily fit on a project like this specifically.
You mean we put that much thought into it, whether the tree grows up or the tree grows down?
There were a lot of iterations on this one.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
It's like for me, I want to see, a tree's cool, but the variations of the trees.
Perfect example. I'll give you a perfect example. Ming Avenue in Bakersfield. Years ago, many moons ago, they planted pines. And these pines are beautiful. They actually are still pretty green. But the pines grew out. Well, what has happened is the semi-trucks have found a way to trim so they've got a perfect box cut out of these pine branches from where traffic goes through, and just, you got to think about that kind of stuff, right? And many years ago, someone probably thought, oh, this pine will be great. And then and this happens all over. So you got to take those little things into consideration.
Yep. I mean, Tehachapi Boulevard being the prime example, we only had 8 feet. So we really wanted to get taller oak species that would push up and not spread quite so much.
Mm-hmm.
So we found that, and the crew that won the contract is almost completed.
Yep.
This journey. And how many total trees do we end up with, or close
Just
to?
shy of 500.
That's a lot of trees.
Well,
it's
a lot of trees. It's a lot of landscaping, right? Because the landscaping, like the infrastructure, the watering, which is all done via non-potable water. So that's all got to get run. The controls have to be put in. And then even today, and then of course the tree's planted. So it's not just like when you go to your house, you dig a hole, you plant a tree, you run a sprinkler to it or a drip line to it. Pretty simple, right? Do this on a scale of 400, and then bring in the lines. And then even today, they're cutting, or they're back patching where they cut the roads to run the irrigation lines across. You got to then go back and fix the roads where you cut across. So it's not just throw trees in the ground and throw some water on them. There's a lot of, once even the project starts, a lot of follow-up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And irrigation and electrical and coordination with SCE, all these things. Each site had a different electrical plan because we essentially had 3 sites around town, and so as Corey said, it's not a simple endeavor when you start thinking about the actual nuts and bolts.
And this was a grant, and this was 100% funded also, right?
Correct.
So let's kind of put this in the timetable, since this is the grant show. And when we started, when did you start the application on the Valley Boulevard Park? How many months ago? That was within this in 2021.
Yes, it was.
And that was expedited. Now, the urban greening, different organization, different entity, but what was the timetable on writing that grant?
That was 2018 when we wrote the grant.
And here we are into 2022.
Yeah, so that one's the longest lived grant since I've been here. Typical, if we were discussing typical turnaround time, it'd be about a year to 18 months after getting the grant to starting construction, and then another 6 months for construction. So a 2-year turnaround, maybe 2.5 is about average. And there's there's compliance along the whole way and audits and everything else to make sure you're spending the money in the manner that you're supposed to be.
And the one thing that we see with these grants is very rigid. You don't have flexibility when you say you're going to deliver this and this is how you're going to do it.
You have to.
Yeah, otherwise you're not going to get that money.
No, you won't.
You violate the grant.
Andrew had an approved list of trees. I mean, it was like they were going back and forth between the Afghan pine and the blue pine, and it was down to the nitty gritty details with the grant folks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you go in these iterations like, oh, the blue Atlas cedar was one they had recommended, and it's like it's just not commercially available in the scale we need.
Yeah.
Yep, we can go to Home Depot or Specialty Store and find one. You can't find 300 of them, and so it was kind of a mute. And so you have all these blends of.
Right, but it doesn't have value to go get one.
No.
You've now your costs start shooting up very rapidly, and you have to find something that's available in volume that is commercially prepared. You're going to these big nurseries that's not the regular nursery that I go to, like you said, at Home Depot. This is a large scale development, sourced.
That's where
nursery.
We wound up with oaks being the happy blend, is commercially available all over the place. I mean, there's a lot of nurseries that grow a lot of oaks, and the specific species, I think we had 3 or 4, but that gave us the diversity, and 2, the ability to, is it 100 of these or 200? And we wound up finding a blend that was available of the 4 or 5 species.
And we found one that I think is really cool that I want to plant at my house is the Evergreen Cork Oak. Is that what it was called? Yep. So it's the one as you drive through like right now in the month of March where everything's not quite green yet. It actually has leaves on it. And it's a cork oak. And so it stays evergreen. And so I want to get me a couple of those myself.
Very cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a cool deal.
So how does it feel when you wrap something up? When you guys start it, you it starts on paper, and Denise, you're the one writing down, the need, the whys, and then all of a sudden, 2 years later, it comes to fruition. You can look out and you can see something that's completed. How do you feel?
Well, there's a huge sense of pride. I mean, Snyder Avenue is a wonderful example of that, and just how the kids were walking in the dirt, and now they have sidewalks to walk on, and the road looks beautiful, and it has completely changed the way it feels to just either walk or drive on that road.
And beyond the beauty aspect, the safety aspect, especially when you talk about the kids in front of the school, I mean, that's got to make you feel good that you've improved the safety for those kids going to and from school.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's what I strive to do, with these ATP grants. Not just safety for the students, but safety for seniors, safety for everybody.
So the Snyder project, that was tied into ATP?
Yeah, there were 2 Snyder projects. There was the ATP project, which did the sidewalks, and then there was the road projects, and they were from 2 different funds. So the road on Snyder was not funded through ATP. It was through a different funding source.
So with the workshop that's coming up and the ATP grant opportunities ahead of us, you're looking at those types of things, whether it's on the same scale or not. You're looking at how you can, and that's a good example, the before and the after, because so many of us have had kids that have gone to school there and been up and down Snyder, that you can think about the before and what it is now. Right. And then what are the areas around town that are in that before state that we'd like to see in this current state of what Snyder is. Yeah. So the workshop, that will help you.
Yes, it will. And it's not, it's not just getting to school, it's getting to parks, it's getting to work, it's getting to the store. It's any of those routes that if they were improved and safe, that you would either walk or bike there.
I think it's important to bring up Denise talks about funding and that sort of thing. When it comes to funding grants, so we just got, just shy of $2.1 million for this park. we're not getting a check for $2.1 million in the mail from the state of California. So it's not how it works. And so I think there's a misconception that like, oh, we get this grant money, then we can, we just have to spend it on the right stuff. No, we have to actually build it. So we need to have we need to be in a strong fiscal position to go out and actually basically advance the money ourselves to build this thing. And then we get reimbursed on these grants back,
Exactly.
And then we say, okay, this part of the project's done. We're requesting, $500,000 back on this grant, and then we'll get the money. So we don't get a big allotment of cash from the state that says, okay, now go build this project you told us you were going to build. We need to actually start building it and go through the design like Andrew and fund that, and then submit reimbursements as part of it. So
Exactly.
So we don't get anything above and beyond. And if we don't use it, we never got the money. So we just, there's a lot of times we'll come in under budget on a grant, and that money just, goes away. We don't get it, and we never
don't get it.
We never had it.
It stays back at the originating
it goes back into
point.
the pot. Yeah.
Well, Andrew, how does it make you feel? I mean, I see how hard you work on these things and the levels of frustrations when you're dealing with things, or there's the change
Cool as
order
a
or
cucumber,
something.
man. He's never frustrated. What are you talking about?
Yeah, sure.
Well, Andrew's come and visited me in my office a few times, and he just needs to sit down and kind of separate himself from whatever just occurred. And and
At completion of the project, it's an immense sense of accomplishment. I mean, to have dealt with all the issues along the way and the unknown water lines or whatever they are, and completion absolutely feels fantastic. As you're getting drugged through the ringer during construction, not so fantastic.
It feels good to be a part of something, though. I mean, not so much these projects, but just like when I work with a business to recruit somebody here, right? And you remember the first meeting you had with them, and then you're at the grand opening of their store or their restaurant, and then when you drive by, you always think like, yeah, I had a pretty big part in making that happen, you know. And so it does. It's kind of cool to have that feeling when you see something that comes out well. Like, yeah, you forget really quickly how much of a struggle it was, I think, and you're really happy with the end result. At least I am. Andrew, maybe not so much.
Especially when it comes to safety. I mean, thinking of Snyder specifically, we did the larger bulb out to the crosswalk, and it hugely improved traffic flow over there. And then same for the Salvation Army on the corner. As Denise said, it wasn't just the school, but we made a ramp in front of the Salvation Army on that corner, and hopefully that alleviated a lot of their pedestrian traffic coming from the school parking lots.
And they have a lot of pedestrian traffic that go there. So that entire corridor is heavily used. Yeah. So it's a great example. It's probably one of the most heavily walked areas in the city. And, to see it where it is now, it's amazing.
So one that's coming up soon that we haven't discussed is Denison. So we're in the process of design. I think we were awarded last year the funds for Denison. We're now starting design. We made it through the environmental process with the state, and now we're improving, working on designing, or will be here in a month or so, starting the design of Denison from the high school to Tehachapi Boulevard. And we're going to include something similar to a traffic signal system to allow kids to cross the street right in front of the high school. On the east side of the road, we're going to add curb gutter sidewalk all the way to Tehachapi Boulevard. That connects to the bike paths and the north side of the tracks. And so this is something maybe that, an ode to Denise perhaps on how consistently you have to score well and find these projects and massage these things to work together to be constantly building.
And Denise and I talked about that briefly the other day on Denison. It was like, and that's something that you hadn't thought about, but someone brought to your attention. Do you remember that? We were talking about the seniors.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is that when I wrote the grant, I walked over there to Denison and realized that the seniors had no safe access. They could not leave their little island safely because of the offset intersection at Valley, and then the other side ended into a dirt path, and then the crosswalk across Denison was poorly done, wasn't safe at all. And those people were almost like landlocked, and they couldn't get from their homes anywhere safely, but by using active transportation. And I wrote about that in the grant. And it's funny because now part of the ATP metrics is to include seniors. I'm not saying that my grant did that, but I did that before it was part of their metrics.
Well, it brings the human element to it, to government. You went out there, physically stood there and looked around. It was, obviously the kids, high school kids, But then you were able to stand there and go, hold on a second, here's something that we haven't identified, an entire demographic, a little community that's with seniors. And like you said, they're locked there. If they don't have a car, they're going to have difficulty, especially if they have challenges, physically walking.
Right.
It's a barrier. Mm-hmm. So this workshop helps you to identify and we can kind of humanize the element of grants, if you will, and the needs of the community by participating. Now, it's easy to be a keyboard warrior and fire off all the, and vent on social media, but to take the time to come and say, hey, we really have this need, and genuinely express yourself so we can do what we can to address it and prioritize those needs. I think that's probably a big goal.
It is. I really want to make this a safer community, a walkable, bikeable community that people can not have to get in their cars to go across town. If they want to go to the park, there's a safe way for them to get to the park, or let their kids go to school on their bike. There are so many parents who drop their kids off because there's no safe way for them to get there. I don't blame them.
I've been using our ATP stuff a lot more lately, punishing myself with longer and longer runs. And I'm going to tell you, last weekend was on a super long run, and we just had some weather. So a good chunk of the bike path that I use a lot from Stuber all the way down to Denison, there was some flooding the day before. And so I thought, okay, I can't, there's some water on the path. I don't want to go on it and, muddy and wet and that kind of stuff. So I was basically attempting to run on the the southbound lanes kind of into on the shoulder and, with traffic coming at me. And I'm like, I did it for like half a mile. And I said, this is stupid. I'll take my chances on the bike path with some water on it, because I was like, how do we, and I mean, I take that for granted now, that bike path, that walking, cycling path that we have that goes around, whether it's Antelope Run, using it a ton now, the Valley bike paths, and I just, that short half mile when I was running with traffic inches from me, and I'm like, this is stupid. I'm gonna go use this piece we have. I thought, man, how much I appreciate having that stuff when you get a chance to get out and actually use it. And then when you don't have it for a second, you're like, this isn't gonna work.
Well, I do see people every day out on some portion of our bike path. No matter wherever I go, I take off for lunch or I go get gas in the car, and I drive around, and I see people out there different times of the day and night that are out there using either on foot, or they're on two wheels, or I've even seen some with disabilities with their motorized, little rascals, out there being able to get from point A to point B in a safe manner.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Anything else that we haven't talked about that you guys want to bring up, or nothing that we can tease? No. Okay. I guess we teased this upcoming, grant that you were just talking about. So. Yeah. We can leave it at that. But exciting stuff. Congratulations, almost $2.1 million for this new park that was just sitting idle because there was no funding for it. And then all of a sudden the opportunity came up and you jumped on it. Yep. And we got it. Mm-hmm. Congratulations on urban greening coming to a 4-year close.
With a pandemic thrown in the middle. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And then don't forget the workshop, and you can send your comments, thoughts to Denise through projects@TehachapiCityHall.com, or you can give us a call at 661-822-2200 extension 140 and leave a voicemail. But we'd really love to have you come out on the 30th to TPD, the community room. And was that 6 o'clock?
It's at 5.
At 5 o'clock. And get your input in so that way we can record it and we look at, future, projects through the active transportation program through Caltrans, and try and bring more of that money back from Sacramento and put it right back to use here in Tehachapi.
Exactly.
So Denise, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah,
we appreciate the time.
Well done as always, guys.
Thank
well
you.
done.
Thank you.
It's always about the guests,
exactly.
it is, and what they bring. And Corey, in one of our future podcasts, next couple, Richard Chapman's going to join us.
Nice.
From
Is he going to tell jokes? Only if he tells jokes. You've got to throw a couple of Richard Chapman jokes in there.
I haven't heard any of his jokes.
All
Okay.
right. Oh, yeah. Anytime he hosts an EDC event, there's always jokes.
Well, he's going to talk about current EDC. And then one of the things that they do have coming up on April 1st is the STEMposium. It's a career expo and that's going to be in Bakersfield, but it really is going to be, a big deal.
It's focused heavily on East Kern because a lot of those jobs are in East Kern. And so, that'll be, they do it every year, COVID off and on, but super excited about it. And a lot of the STEM showcase and career pathways, those are centered around East Kern. Some of the energy stuff is in the Central Valley with the carbon capture sector, but there's a lot of East Kern, ramifications with that career expo. So I'm excited about that.
And the Kern EDC does quite a bit for small business, all different size businesses, and they are very present in East Kern.
Yeah, we have an East Kern Economic Alliance that meets every other month, and it's basically founded by and ran by the Kern Economic Development Corporation.
So Richard will be joining us in one of the next few episodes,
Nice.
So that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks for the time today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to do it again. Excited about this part. Can't wait.
And we want to invite your comments and thoughts. If there's a show idea, send them to media@TehachapiCityHall.com. That's where we get a lot of these, ideas on where we're going to go, who we're going to talk to, or we see the questions that are out there. And some of these questions is the reason why that Denise and Andrew were brought in today. It's like, hey, there's questions going on in the community. Let's address them. Let's answer those questions. And, if we have a more educated public, I think they're more confident in what goes on. So I think that's the goal. So again, media@TehachapiCityHall.com. We appreciate your time, and we'll catch you on a future episode.
TehachaPod is a conversation about Tehachapi designed for the people who live here or who would like to know more about this mountaintop community. If you have a question you would like answered, email media@TehachapiCityHall.com. We will try to answer it on a future episode of TehachaPod.